Joining us now from his Pittsburgh area district is Congressman Chris Deluzio. He's a Democrat. He's an Iraq War veteran, and he's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Congressman, thanks for making time for us today. You heard the Secretary just now. What do you say to that?
Well, I think what the Secretary didn't say is how the heck he's actually going to deliver the care and benefits the American people expect us to deliver to veterans while he's cutting 80,000 people. What I understand and what I see and what veterans sense is they're trying to privatize the VA. And you talk about accountability, GAO reports, let's talk about that. We know GAO has found when you talk about community care, there's less oversight of things like opioid prescriptions for veterans than it happens within the VA. That this is a moment where we have more veterans finally coming in because of the PACT Act, toxic exposed veterans, burn pit exposed veterans, Agent Orange, you name it. And this is the exact moment to be investing in VA resources, VA staff. You can't cut 80,000 people and deliver on the promise of caring for veterans. So his math doesn't add up and the accountability doesn't add up because we know when we outsource care, we pay more. We lose the expertise of veterans care. PTSD, military sexual trauma, prosthetics, you name it. We have experts in VA who care for veterans in a very specific way.
Now, you have a long track record. You have been a critic, a bipartisan critic of how the VA works in the past. And I definitely hear where you're coming from about cuts versus retention. But there's no reform, no major reform anyway, that would come without disruption. Is that fair?
Well, you talk about major reform. Let's do it. Major reform is getting benefits to veterans now who were exposed to burn pits, were exposed to Agent Orange, and they don't have to spend years fighting to get into the VA. And to go in that moment and cut the exact people we need to process those claims, to do outreach to veterans, to provide care, it's not going to work. And I say this to the Secretary or anyone else. We know from lots of evidence that care out in the community is less accountable for veterans than it is when they're in VA. And we often pay more. I mean, you're more likely as a veteran to die if you go to an emergency room out in town rather than in the VA. That's clear data, and the Secretary must know that. We should be doubling down on investing in our Veterans Affairs facilities and staff, and where we got to fill gaps, folks should be able to get care in the community. What he's trying to do, I see it. It's a privatization scheme to turn the VA into a voucher system. Veterans don't want that. Veterans want our VA to improve, to be there. And by the way, on lots of metrics, VA beats care out in the community. You talk to veterans in more rural communities, they don't have some abundance of physicians and doctors and nurses out there. VA may be the only option. So we cannot expect that we're going to just voucher our way out of caring for veterans. It's going to be more expensive and less accountable, and we don't have any evidence that it'll work.
So frustration that you have and your fellow Democrats have on this and other topics is part of why you were one of those who voted against a continuing resolution to keep the government open through the end of the year. And the House served it up, and after a week of drama over a possible shutdown, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and 9 other Democrats said, never mind, and helped them get their bill over the finish line. Your leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, was asked about his counterpart in the Senate's leadership, and he evaded the question. He declined to answer. What are we to make of this apparent rift? What's going on here?
Look, I serve in the House, and I think you saw the vote from House Democrats. House Republicans packed a bill that was partisan. They wanted to go it alone. And you saw the vote and on veterans part of this in particular. I mean, they defunded next year's cost of war toxic exposure fund from $22 billion to $0. I think folks should know that. That's not just a Democratic objection to this bill. Defunded police grants as well, and there's more. But what's going on the Senate side, you got to talk to the senators. I think it was a mistake to support a bad bill that also ballooned the deficit, more deficit spending. And my statement and my vote speaks for itself. This was a bad bill that hurt a lot of my community, and I wasn't going to support it. And I think Democrats in the Senate, when they're not included in negotiations, when they're iced out, when our people are going to be hurt, should stand their ground. And I think that's not just a Democratic Party issue. That is what our people expect of us.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.